Thanks for having me, Janelle. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. I always like to start off my episodes by asking basically, what's your word of the week? Knowing that this is a Monday, it's a new week, what intention do you want to set for this upcoming week?
I think it's always the same peace
Why always the same?
because think about it. If you have peace, then you probably have everything else you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I promised myself that we were just chatting. You were saying that, oh, are you a real estate agent? I said, yeah. I promised myself a long time ago, about 6 to 8 months ago, that I wouldn't continue working with a client if they didn't bring me peace. And I
Hmm.
agree. A lot of my business is pretty easy and flowy once the vibe is more peaceful. So I agree.
Yeah.
Now, book launch 2 days from now, correct? Is that still the same date when we last spoke?
July 12th, Wednesday.
Are you nervous at all?
Oh, I mean, it's ready. I'm ready to give birth, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
being pregnant and being like, okay, I'm ready to get this baby out in the world.
100%. What was that journey like? At what point did you wake up and say, "No, you know what? With all of my experience, I need to write a book." And were you nervous or excited to finally get pen to paper when you finally started?
Yeah, so I'd been writing the book for 25 years, so it wasn't
Wow.
like it was just always writing stories from childhood. I started in my early 30s, and then I came out of meditation last year and felt like it was timing. Everything had
Mhm.
kind of came full circle and I was ready to do it. I could, hire the team that I needed to help me. Writing a book is you can't do it alone, right? It's a pretty big endeavor. So you
Mhm.
got to have good editors and good, copy editors and different types of readers. And, a lot goes into it for
Mhm.
sure.
When you're choosing your team to surround yourself around a publication that's obviously a memoir, so it's really sensitive to you, do you find you look to hire people that can understand the story and have maybe a similar background, or you're just looking for a skill level? Like, can you get this book out for me?
Yeah, no, I definitely wanted somebody who had experience in writing trauma
Mm.
and could, really help me articulate from a place because I've healed. You know, there's a saying, if you use memory, don't allow memory to use you. And certainly in writing a memoir, you never want to write something you haven't fully
Mhm.
unpacked and healed and have closure on because the
Huh.
reader will feel it. And I had been to memoir writing workshops throughout the years, and that was the same advice always. And so when I looked for a developmental editor, I found somebody who specialized in trauma in Nashville. She was excellent. And she had a real sensitivity because she also had went through childhood trauma. But so she worked out perfect. And then, all the people who helped me. But it's not like I could hire a ghostwriter or somebody to write the book for me because it's my stories.
Yeah.
So I really had years of writing and, sending all that. And yeah, it was quite a process. And there were even some, I guess, surprising moments because I started to feel, a lot of vulnerability and kind of exploited, like I was sharing a little too much sometimes. And so
Mhm.
I really listened to my wise little one, my emotions, my little girl, and a few things she said, I'd prefer not everybody know that. It's like,
Mhm.
okay. So I did have to go back to the drawing board.
And I'm sure with writing a memoir as well, you feel that initially that, okay, this is about me, I should give all the details, like the reader's entitled to them, but I'm sure as you were reading you realized, no, I don't need to give them everything, like, enough, but it's still my story and still gonna be out there for the world, so I'm sure there's definitely, yeah, some details that you want to keep for yourself.
Yeah, I was very transparent in the book. I mean, I shared, from you know, all the domestic violence, of course, in my childhood, which as a child, but then I was conditioned. So every behavior that I did as an adult that perpetuated the trauma, I also shared cheating on my ex husband, being raped, putting myself in situations, not valuing myself, being very promiscuous in college. I really want the reader to know that, the most authentic people have nothing to hide. And
Mm,
when you do the work I teach, I created the emotional healing system. And when you do the work I teach, then you're in a place you don't have to hide because you love and accept yourself. And if someone else doesn't, that really has nothing to do with you, right? It's a
mm,
reflection of them. So I get that. But there were some things that maybe I need more healing on. I certainly don't feel like we arrive. We always
yeah.
have another layer to peel back, the never ending onion.
The people that you've had read the book so far, even if those people haven't been through the same situations as you had, do you feel like they can relate?
Yeah, I mean, the reviews are pretty astounding.
Yeah, what
So,
have you gotten from for the listeners listening right now, like, what are some of the reviews saying?
well, I mean, the book right now is actually up on Amazon, and anybody who received an advanced reader copy, like yourself, can go on there and put reviews. So there is a review on there right now. And yeah, I just found it today because I was looking. I was like, oh, somebody's reviewed the book. Oh, and it was somebody I'd done an interview with. She received
Yeah.
it. And she gave a beautiful review, and not to read it all because it was a lot. She just ends with saying, "This book is not merely a recommended read, it's a life-altering journey that should be embarked upon by everyone. As you secure a copy of Wise Little One, consider extending this empowering narrative to a friend. The gift of sharing such an impactful story may serve as the first step towards your own healing process and theirs as well. After all, Jana's tale is a testament to the extraordinary potential of the human mind and spirit to heal, grow, and transform thousands of lives across the globe."
Every time you get that feedback or get a review or someone messages you saying like, "Wow, like this really touched my heart." What is your reaction? Are you
W
surprised or like, is it more
No.
motivation to keep
Yeah.
continuing? What does it
Yeah.
do for you?
Yeah, so I already had seen that before, so that's part of what I
Mhm,
share in the book, how to envision what you desire and
mhm.
how to manifest. And so I'm pretty much a manifesting machine. So, and I
Right.
teach that, right? And I teach it in the book. So I have already sent myself to a future where I'm
Mhm.
receiving emails like that, knowing, of course, that, there are people who live from a constricted state of consciousness. A lot of what I share is going to be outside their awareness. They're
Yeah,
going to feel, I've had some reviews on NetGalley and some that were like, "Oh, this should come with trigger warnings." It does. It has
of
the
course.
author's note. They only pointed out, what they didn't like. So there's those as well. But predominantly it's been all very positive. Of course, with people like yourself, because when you're in this field and you're really intent on healing, you understand things that average people who are still victims don't, and they're not
Yeah.
interested in hearing about somebody overcoming a story worse than theirs when they're holding on to their story with dear dear life, right? So, yeah.
I don't think any of those people listen to this podcast.
And I don't think
Even though
they'll
that's
read my book.
exactly it's about.
I think they, a lot of people, because Wise Little One, I was getting a massage. I still didn't have a name for the book. It was like
Mhm.
around December. The book was finished in February. So I was very close to the end. And I hadn't really thought about it much. The team of people who were helping were like, don't worry about the title, it'll come. So
Okay,
I'm
well,
getting this amazing massage. And right in the middle of the massage, it downloads like just out of
wow.
nowhere. Wise Little One, learning to love and listen to my inner child. And I was like, oh, that's it. Okay, the massage is over. I was ready to go launch the book, but it also, there's no other books named that, but there's a lot that kind of lend to more children's books.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh no, like, some people I think might not think much inner child and they don't know really what inner child work is. And then they, get it thinking it's something that it's not. A lot of
Mhm.
cuss words, a lot of profanity. My dad cussed a lot. I try to make an accurate depiction of what was going on.
Yeah. I wanna give you the floor a little bit to for everyone that's listening now that will read your book later, give them a little synopsis about your personal journey from being a victim of childhood abuse and trauma to becoming a healer and author. Like, bring us all the way back without giving too much away because we
Okay.
obviously want them to read the book as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Janelle. So, grew up in Central Florida in the Bible Belt, had two really attractive parents that had the whole, world was their oyster. They could have done anything. They were both very emotionally unintelligent
Mm.
and broken, I would say, from their own family of origin. My mom lost her dad at 12 years old. My dad was her best friend. They trauma bonded. My dad's father lost his legs on the railroad. So they had this trauma bond. And then, of course, once they got married and they had us and all their hopes and everything kind of went, down the drain. Dad turned to alcohol just like his father and became a raging alcoholic and womanizer. And my mom, steadily declined throughout the years until she had Alzheimer's. She died last year of Alzheimer.
Mhm.
And so there's a quiz that clinicians give patients. It's called the ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's only 10 questions. I scored 10 out of 10. But
Wow.
at 12 years old, I had a spiritual awakening. And I always say one of the gifts, Janelle, of that childhood was I had to find some inner refuge to disassociate from the chaos that was happening around me. And it was like a war zone. You never knew what you were going to find or come into. My mom shot my dad. There was a lot of chaos,
Mhm.
sexual abuse, physical abuse, food deprivation, a lot. But at a young age, I'm a reincarnationist and I'm a past life regressionist. And I trained with Dr. Brian Weiss, and his book, Many Lives, Many Masters, changed my life. And it changed my life because we don't know what happens after we die. All I knew was that belief system, that way of viewing the world, gave me freedom. It made me take responsibility as a young adult for my childhood. Instead of being a
Mhm.
victim, I began reincarnation said, you chose those parents. You
Yeah.
had karmic debt. You had to pay off some debt. So I started thinking like, wow, I must be a pretty badass soul to
Yeah.
have
You
chose
see it
all of that.
you see it from such a different perspective when you start reading and
Yes,
learning about these things. You don't become a victim anymore. That's for
no
sure. If
more.
you ever
And
were.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and I was because I was like, "Woe is me, poor me, why did I have" and I didn't like it when I would get pity from people because and I
Mhm.
felt weak, and I didn't wanna be weak like my mother, so I was pretty young, like 22 when I found that book, and it changed my life, and I started to say, okay, so then if my soul chose it, I corrected a lot of karma. So,
Mhm.
karma, just for the listeners, is really like an accounting system. Every
Yeah.
soul comes in with debits and credits. Well, I had some debits, and I guess my soul said, bring it on fast and furious. Well, I can get through it so I can enjoy my life. Well, I still had challenges all the way up until I had my daughter at 22. I'm a single mom. I start working really hard to correct and to be a cycle breaker. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to break the cycle of dysfunction. And I know there's people out there who know how to do it. Yeah, I went to therapy, but it wasn't therapy. It was more thought leaders, authors, books that I was reading, Oprah Winfrey, guests she would have
Mhm.
on, and I would just get lit up. I'm 57. I mean, I've been on this path a long time, over 30, about 36 years,
Mhm.
really conscious 36 years, and just continued on that path and started to say, okay, am I going to become a psychologist? No, I don't want to do traditional work. What do I want to
Mhm.
do? I was entrepreneurial already. So
Mhm.
as I healed, every teacher, I had success with my ex-husband in a business that afforded me the ability to be able to go to all these retreats and start doing these trainings with Deepak Chopra and Debbie Ford and Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson and all of them, Eckhart Tolle. And so
Mhm.
I said that I know these people know. And I just started to see there's practices that if somebody taught us and we did on a daily basis, it would radically change our lives. So why isn't anyone
Yeah.
teaching this? So the second book actually is coming out. It'll probably be finished by the end of this year, but it is The Emotional Healing System, which is being co-authored with my husband, who's a
Yeah.
physician. So I'm
And it's more
excited about that.
tactical.
Yeah.
More tactical? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So they can
No.
read your memoir
Yeah.
and then understand like, "Okay, let's do this my own tactical way of getting through this."
It's traditional self-help. It'll have, at the end of each chapter, try this, journal this, prompts, things
Yeah.
to do. It'll give them, yeah, very practical advice. And I do that in Wise Little One in 11 chapters. but they're
Mhm.
just little snippets because memoir
Mhm.
is more written like a novel, right? It's not,
Yeah, or like a
yeah,
diary, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I prefer memoirs, it's one of my favorite I go
Me
back and forth
too.
between memoirs and, like, autobiographies and then, like, straight fiction. Like, I used to read a lot of self-help in my early 20s or, like, late teens, early 20s, and I find my self-help style now comes from, like, podcasts or YouTube or that kinda stuff, but I don't read as many self-help books as I used to. So,
Mhm.
it's interesting that you brought up, like, "Oh, I went to therapy, but not traditional therapy," because I only just started going to therapy this January, and then I thought to myself, like, "What stopped me from going for so long?" And I think it's because, honestly, I was probably using a lot of non-traditional therapy of these thought leaders and self-help books that maybe I felt that I didn't need the traditional therapy as most people do. But now we're in it, so it's a nice pie to fill.
It is. Now, early on, I did go to therapy. So I
Oh,
did
okay.
do weekly therapy
Mhm.
sessions, but found that they didn't get to root cause. It's a lot of top down,
Yeah.
right? So it's just dealing with what's going on in life now. You got 50 minutes to an hour. They're not taught in their defense to
Mhm.
teach us how to fish so we can feed
Yeah.
ourselves, right? They're just taught to like listen, hold space. I work with a
Yeah.
lot of clinicians. I just finished working with psychiatrists. A lot of what I teach, they don't even learn in school, and
Mm.
it's traditional psychology, like
Mhm.
psychosynthesis or the way I teach it, the importance of the teaching they never got.
Mm.
So it's going
Yeah.
to the root of why is this person unhappy? And in Wise Little One, I share it's because we operate from beliefs. It's like an operating
Mhm.
system. I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. I'm undeserving because we picked that up from our parents or our caregivers or school teachers or somewhere in those first developmental years.
That's a lot of digging and unraveling, though, because you used a good example when you were in, I think you said your 20s when you were being promiscuous.
Hmm.
Someone could just use that and say, ah, she's just young and having fun and just wants attention. But when you go back and deeper, it does lead or link up to, I feel unlovable, I feel unworthy. But how does one person get from, "Okay, I'm promiscuous and like guy attention," to understand that maybe it does come from that level of that deep? Like, how does someone understand it? It is inner
Well,
child
the
work
only thing I
ultimately.
found was hypnotherapy. So I became a
Oh.
hypnotherapist 16, 17 years ago. It was the only thing that helped me because I bypassed my intellect and my conscious mind and got down into the subconscious. And then
Mm,
I was able, I mean, I was aware, listen, that
yeah.
after I hooked up with a guy at a bar and came
Mhm.
home and the walk of shame the next morning, I didn't have high self esteem. That was not
Mm,
like I was aware, I could have been lying to myself, the acronym for denial is don't even know I am lying. So I think
mm,
people stay in denial. Oh, I'm just a modern woman. I can have sex with anybody. And, that is not honoring yourself. There's a little girl inside of you. Would you just go let everybody have sex with her? Like,
mhm.
it's not healthy, period.
Yeah.
And I hear people say that. And I'm just always like, my heart it breaks for me because I know they're in denial. They don't
Mm,
know what they don't know. And
yeah.
eventually it'll catch up with them.
Did you continue your relationship with your parents once you had your own children, and did you ever mend that relationship before your mom passed?
Yeah, of course. I was always in a relationship with my mom. My mom, and I were very soul connected. I
Mhm.
know and, from my work as a regressionist about past lives that I've spent with my mom and had compassion. In some ways, I even began to ponder, I don't know, again, it's mystery. Maybe my mom's soul was so evolved that she chose this lifetime to present herself in a way to me to force me to choose differently. I mean, she
Mm.
became my anti-teacher. So
Yeah.
often I would think like, she'd come home from the hospital and be gone for months. They've done electroshock treatment on her. Her brain's rewired. She's reading. I mean, when I was 8 years old, I was meditating. When I was
Wow.
7 years old, she was teaching me astrology and like a lot of mystical teachings from India. She was teaching me about near death experiences. So
Mm.
then she would eventually go back to her regular state of consciousness because nothing changed in her world externally. But me, I was a child. I was like a little sponge.
Yeah, of
She would just
course.
pour into me. And I thought, as I look back, the woman I am today in large part is because of my mom. My mom was complicated for sure. The woman loved fiercely. So there is
Mm.
never a doubt in my mind how much she adored me and loved me and did not want me to make the choices she had.
Right.
And but she had mental illness. She was bipolar with borderline personality disorder. She would attempt suicide. She couldn't manage emotion. She was erratic, but then she would have times where she was very stable. And I mean, I'm a heart math facilitator, so it teaches all about the power of the heart. And I remember
Mhm.
growing up, if my brother and I argued, my mom would make us hug each other heart to heart, and we had
Yeah.
to take 3 deep, long breaths. And we would say at the end, she would say, "Feel the love. Do you feel it? That's your brother, like, that's your sister," she would say, and it would connect my brother and I, and even when you read the story, my brother and I have been estranged a lot as adults
Yeah.
because we're very different. He's very fundamentalist Christian. He's very, he thinks I'm a little woo-woo,
You
but
are. We love that though.
I love that. But in the end, the love that my mom, I mean, she really bridged that with the two of us to that we both respect where one another are and their lives, and we don't infringe upon that. We still have a good communication. My dad passed when I was in my early 30s. I talk about it in the book. I certainly was close to that soul too. He called for me as he was dying. I again left a trip. My wise little one was saying something's up. I got on a plane, arrived home, hit my answering machine, and heard his brother telling me he had passed away. I
Your
had a
intuition is
connection,
strong.
very strong. And so that happened. And then my mom passed away July 23rd. It'll be 1 year anniversary coming up.
Yeah. Mm. So you had
So,
her a lot longer.
yeah, mom,
Almost double.
I was never close to my dad. He didn't live with us much. Mom really raised us by herself, along with
Yeah.
my grandmother. But my mom, I had a lot of great memories. She
Mm.
traveled with us quite a bit to care for my daughter. She spent a lot of time with me and my daughter Taylor, but towards the end she started to lose connection with reality, and we had to put her in a home, and
Mm.
it got ugly and it was sad. But she still remembered me.
She probably wasn't old, hey?
She was 79 when she died.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't like, I was doing
Yeah.
the math in my head, I'm like, "I bet she wasn't 80." Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she died.
Um, I'm curious about your relationship with your brother. It's so interesting to me. I don't have any siblings, so I find sibling relationships so fascinating to me. 2 people, especially when there's childhood trauma, 2 people can grow up under the same household, have the same trauma, like, obviously, you take it in different ways, and then go in 2 completely different directions. And as one could say the stuff that each of you are doing has a lot of similarities, just presents a lot differently. But do you
Yeah.
guys see eye to eye at all?
Yeah, so we had very different traumas. So, yes, we lived in the same
Yeah,
house, but he
but
was
different
brutally
traumas.
beaten by my father. I wasn't. So
Ah, but you saw it.
yeah, but
Yeah,
my mom abused me and him, but my dad abused him. And the abuse that he received under my dad as a boy was probably even more traumatic too, because it's a son and
yeah.
it was very twisted. It was, he beat him with a belt buckle. When he was an adult, he had a grapefruit-sized tumor removed from his leg that my dad did. My dad just beat him down so unmercifully. It was horrible, and psychologically, the names he would call him, just the way he treated
Yeah,
him. So to say that we both grew up the same with the same, absolutely not. I was definitely,
interesting.
if we had 2 bedrooms, my mom got a bedroom, I got a bedroom, he slept on the couch. Even my mother, she preferred me, and she would put me on a pedestal. My dad put me on a pedestal. So,
Wow.
I received a much different treatment than him. And
Wow.
I don't know why. I think my
Yeah.
mom had so much guilt about that. My brother ended up becoming an addict for a while, but he got off. It was meth. He got off meth. He cleaned himself up. He's healthy now. He has a YouTube cooking channel. He cooks
Wow.
healthy. He works at like a grocery store. He lives a very simple life. He's very Christian, devout Christian, and you know, he's doing good. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing, like, even just hearing your story and his story, like, both of you have lived 9 different lives already. It's like, oh my god, I don't wanna laugh, but it's like, holy shit, like, the amount of the fact that you're saying this is the upbringing he had, then he becomes a meth addict, and now he's a Christian working in a grocery store, like, those are 3 different people. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And he was
Wow.
morbidly obese. Like, he was about
Wow.
300 pounds, and now he's, like, 170, he weighs his normal weight, and yeah. So, he self-loathed for a long time,
Of course.
and, but my mom's death was actually very healing for him because he was able to care for her in her last
Okay.
3 years, and that's what my mom wanted too. I think she really wanted to reconcile and make up for what she had done by staying with my dad.
Mhm.
She left my father when he hit me. He hit me once, and
And
that
that
was
was it
it.
for her.
Mhm.
That was the straw for her, hey?
Yeah.
Did the abuse only start when the alcoholism started?
Well, that was even before I was born, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dad, they lived in Las Vegas. I mean, really, when I was writing the book, like, and the stories I would hear too of their time in
Mhm.
Vegas. But, dad was very charismatic and he was good looking and he was an Elvis impersonator.
Mhm.
And they're living in Vegas. It's the 60s and he's at the Golden Nugget and he's a blackjack dealer skimming from the house, which is the mob. He would come home. I have a picture of my mom. I put it on my website with a mink. He got her a mink. He would, expensive bottles of scotch and watches and just all kinds of things. And she knows, she's like, okay, something's happening here. Cause mom was kind of a bookworm. She was always at the library reading
Yeah.
and dad was this wild, character and she couldn't contain him. But anyway, the mob beat him up and left him for dead. And she didn't know where he was. So she gets on a Greyhound and goes from Vegas with my 2-year-old brother pregnant with me back to Florida, and they had some interesting stories, my life, even though I was poor on food stamps, living in a trailer, considered trailer trash,
Yeah.
really interesting things happened to me, like Elvis Presley invited us up to a suite, I mean, there were some really cool things that happened. I ended up in Costa Rica meeting the president who was elected and then interviewed by Barbara Walters the week after he got home. I was like, I was supposed to be at an AC/DC concert. I wasn't going to go to a foreign country
Mhm.
and meet the president. It was interesting. It was kind of like Forrest Gump. Now that I'm telling you, I ended up
Yeah.
in like these places, like, I'm like, "Oh, how'd I end up here?"
I'm just starting to get to this age, but at what age do you realize that your parents are just people and you start forgiving them for a lot?
Well, I realized at a young age my parents weren't to be respected. I
Wow.
looked at them, I was like, "I don't respect them. I don't wanna be anything like them." As a matter of
Mm.
fact, the only person in my life I respected was my grandmother. So she's the only one
Mhm.
I would really listen to. Everybody else was just and maybe a few school teachers that were really took
Mhm.
up time and cared about me.
It seems you probably it's a trust thing too.
Exactly, because,
Yeah.
they would speak out 2 sides of their mouth. They were hypocrites, and
Yeah.
so but
Usually all are.
forgiveness began, obviously once I was about 19 and I was really wanting to work out what happened to me in 20. I found a book called You. I was working for Maybelline. I was in San Francisco and this book literally fell off a bookshelf and it's very old. It was written in 1930. You can't even find it anymore. It's very expensive to get a copy. 1935
Really?
copyright. And
Wow.
listen to one of the chapters. Well, it says the most important subject in the world is yourself. It's,
Yeah.
to fall in love with you, to see that you are a spiritual being and here I am 20 years old. Listen, I'm going to show it to you and you can read what that chapter is.
Yeah. 1935, hey?
The law of
For
attraction.
yeah, for people who are just listening just on audio, first
Yeah.
chapter is the law of attraction. That's 1935.
Yeah. So
This is
that book,
not new
yeah,
age stuff. Like, this is
yeah,
100 years old.
exactly. And that book changed my life. That was like I started to use what it was talking about and started to say, "Well, I don't love
Mm.
myself. How do I love myself?" And
Yeah.
then all the tools it taught. And I mean, it's a tiny little book. It's only like 60 pages.
That's all
And
it to be.
yeah, radically changed my life. I was like, "Okay, I'm, going to start manifesting and making my inner world more real than my outer world." So I just
Mhm.
started working on my thoughts and my beliefs and then I would see things manifest and I'd be like, "Oh, this works," and keep
It kinda
going.
freaks you out, hey?
Yeah,
I
totally.
find I notice a lot of manifestation lately for me when it almost seems like the people that are put in my path, I'm like, there are too many weird intricacies here. Like, it's almost like I was just thinking about meeting a person like this. And then all of a sudden I do it. I'm like, huh. I'm like, maybe I'm more powerful than I think.
Well, you know what? I think that synchronicity. So, synchronicity is a word Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist
Yeah.
who coined shadow work, he created that word and it means meaningful coincidences. So, we
Yeah.
certainly are at a time on this planet where things are accelerating, right? And if you have any spiritual practice like meditation, of course, you're going to develop more extrasensory perception. You're going to, just put a subtle thought out into the field and next thing you know, it pops up and you're like, "Oh, I mean, I would like to see us get to a place where it's like, that's not even a big deal." Like, "Oh, yeah, that should be happening." I remember a few years ago, I was about to fall asleep taking a nap on vacation, and so I'm in this perfect place for I call it to get a download from the
Yeah.
field, the
Yeah.
unified
Yeah.
field.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm, like, just about to go to sleep, I hear a name, and I bolt up, and I'm like, I haven't thought of this woman in, like, forever, like, she had stole from me. This I helped her out, gave her a place to stay, turned sour, sent her packing, hadn't thought of her in a couple years, her name pops in. So I immediately
Mhm.
grab my phone, look her up on social media, find her, see she has a website. Oh, cool, what's she up to? Click on it, 100% plagiarized my website.
Ah, what is that girl like twice now? What is her
Tw
problem?
Who? Twice? No,
That
this oh, yeah,
isn't
twice,
that the
yeah.
one that stole from you, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, came to my house, stole from me, like, it was just crazy. So I immediately sent her a cease and desist, but I was laying there telling my husband, like, I know how I know that. I know the universe has my back. I know it's, like, protecting me and guiding me. I don't have to worry about anything. But how rad is that? Like, I was just like, "Oh my god," like, I wouldn't have
So
known.
creepy.
How
Yeah.
would I have
You wouldn't
known?
have, never, never. Unless someone came across the website by
Yeah,
fluke and told you about it, but yeah.
exactly.
It happens
Yeah.
to me too where I'm kinda casually thinking about someone and then they email me or they text me and I'm like and I it comes across as fake because I text them back and say, "I was just thinking of you."
Yeah.
And I do that so often where I'm like, "No, people, like, are gonna think fake, but I really just was." And it's like,
Yeah.
oftentimes I need to do what you do and wake up right away and then go reach out to them, but I end up thinking about them, and I kinda just, like, let it go and let it pass, and then they reach out to me. And I'm like, "I was really thinking about you recently."
Yeah.
It's really odd. It's really odd. I wanna get us back on a track a little bit because if you don't let me, we'll go on many more tangents. I wanna get you to elaborate on your knowledge and teachings you acquired from working with those prominent thought leaders such as Deepak Chopra, Brian Weiss, and Debbie Ford. How did their influence shape your healing approach? If you can give, like, some more specifics.
Yeah, so, I mean, clearly with Deepak, he's been the oldest teacher that I've had, probably about 36, 37 years. His work is really just distilling the ancient teachings of Vedanta, which is non-dualism. And so learning from Deepak way back then in my, early 20s, I couldn't say intellectually I knew what the hell the man was talking
Yeah.
about. Like it was so over my head, but something inside, I would say my soul knew. And
Mm,
every time I would hear him talk about quantum physics or, you know, something, infinite possibilities, I began to believe anything was possible. And it got me excited about what I could, create and attract. And, so that's why I started following him. And of
mm,
course, they were all saying the same thing, Wayne Dyer, him, meditate, meditate, meditate. Well, I had a lot of resistance because, like most people, I was like, oh, I try. Well, trying means to struggle. And I didn't have a meditation teacher. I didn't hire anybody. So once I went to the Chopra Center, got my primordial sound mantra, was taught that the purpose of meditation, actually, they didn't teach me this. This kind of happened just 7 years after becoming a teacher, meditating every day for an hour. One day I came out of meditation. I was like, the whole point of the practice is to be aware when we're lost in thought. Most people would
mm.
say would be, oh, to not think, and that's impossible. So
I think
that's
that's
the
why people don't like it. They're like,
right.
"Wait, I just sit there and not think. How does that happen?"
You can't do it. So you
Mhm,
have to get comfortable that the mind is a thought producing organ that's going to produce turbulent thoughts. As soon as you're aware you're lost in them, all you do,
mm,
like today in meditation, I caught myself. And normally I don't pay attention to what they are. I let it go fast. But this time I remember saying, I cannot believe I'm having a thought about my wedding day. My wedding day happened, I got married 8 years ago. Like I'm like, why am I thinking about I like intricate details of my wedding day. It was the
yeah,
weirdest thing. And of course, you just drop it and you realize that's what happens. So, meditators that are good meditators only get used to getting comfortable with being lost and come back and lost and come back. And I always say it's like you went to the gym that morning when you meditated, you build a muscle. So now you go through your day, and when you're lost in thought, when you're not present, when someone's talking to you and you're somewhere else or thinking about what you're going to say, then you come back to your breath and back to the present moment. So you
mm,
have more joy, more creativity, more peace, more happiness because you're present. You're not lost in the
mhm.
future, worst case
Or dwelling on the
scenario,
past.
or
Yeah,
rehashing the past, which is the prison, it's the known. So
yeah,
his work really radically changed my life in every way, manifestation as well. Joe
mhm.
Dispenza has been a big influence
Yeah,
on
yeah,
me since
very familiar.
2005, before Joe wrote any books, no one knew who he was. He came out
Mhm,
in a documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know? I assisted him at a big symposium in Miami, and he gave me a DVD that he had done, 45-minute lecture. And I sat one Sunday, 5 hours watching a 45-minute lecture because I
over and
listened
over
to it
again.
over and over and took notes, on how to
Wow.
create my ideal day. And so that was like the manifestation. That was like in 2006. And then I had the foundation was meditation. Then I start working with Debbie Ford. I'd already trained with her, added all the shadow work. So I started to think if you take somebody functioning, they don't have
Mhm,
any, major personality disorders. They're not in stress response. They're not, I mean, they could be in stress, but they're not in crisis. Distinction would be
yeah,
crisis. And you teach them every day you need to get up and do this and this. And when this happens, do this and that. So they understand how their psyche is formed, how important it is to connect to spiritual guidance, to be in nature, all these tools, right? To move your body, somatic principles, yoga, breath work, all of that. And they don't need a therapist. They've got like a
mhm,
path that they could take, right? For the
mhm,
rest of their life. And that's my whole goal with and mission with emotional healing systems is to teach people how to heal themselves using
mhm,
practical, evidence-based, research, backed practices.
right. How has emotional healing system helped thousands of people so far? Give me some examples of, healing their past pain.
Well, once someone, steps into ownership and, really self-agency that, okay, because I won't work with anyone who cannot accept in a private setting. In group settings, I don't put this as a, standard. But if I'm working with you private, I won't work with somebody if they cannot accept reincarnation as a possibility. Because so much of our traumas, things happen to us. And when people are coming from a place again of victimization, there's got to be a persecutor and there has to be a rescuer. That's an unconscious triangulation. The conscious
Mhm.
model is I am the creator of my experience. I get to choose the interpretation of what happened in the past to heal
Mhm.
it. And the people who persecuted me became challengers. They were challenging me to grow and evolve. And then I'm not going to run to a rescuer, and if I did, those are gonna be a coach, so I can coach myself to create my own experience, and I can
Mhm.
look at people, my enemies, as my challengers. If it doesn't challenge you, it
Mhm.
doesn't change you. So we've got to
Right.
learn to bless those experiences that we cursed before and those people who did things to us, right? If you ever watch TED Talks,
Always. Yeah, yeah.
there's one you've gotta watch, it's called Wabi Sabi. Her name's
Okay.
Cheryl something, but WABI hyphen SABI, Wabi Sabi TED Talk. Listen to her story. If anybody could be a victim, it's her, and
Yeah.
I work with people who have similar experiences to what she had. I do. I was raped as well. She was raped, and she shares her story. Healing comes when we take responsibility in this present moment, that we're going to choose to look at whatever happened in the past to us as something to help us grow and evolve, or we have a choice. That's free will. And the creator gave us free will, right? So we get to
Mhm.
choose. So,
Why do you think people wanna stay in the victimhood so much?
well, certainly we're living in a world right now where they're really cultivating it. It's like nurture the victim, it's got us in a dysfunctional codependent relationship
I
with
have
every.
so many thoughts. Oh my god, it just seems
We could
seems
do a
like
whole podcast on
everyone
that.
ugh. It's exhausting being around people who think the world needs to be perfectly curated for them instead of them curating their own lives. And
Exactly.
it's like the
So they're
entitlement, I
looking
feel
outside, right? To say,
yeah.
make it fit how I
Mhm.
need it. To answer your question, the reason why I think is because the lack of spiritual connection. When
Really?
yeah, because in the Vedas, which go back 6,000 years,
Mhm.
right? The Rig Veda, it talks about you don't in yoga tradition, Patanjali said there's certain poisons, and Buddhism was birthed out of this teachings. And this is what I've learned from Deepak too, but it's going from these old ancient teachings. And it says people suffer because they don't know the nature of true reality. And then they say,
Mhm.
well, what is the nature of true reality? The nature of true reality is you are God, you are not separate.
Mm.
Like
It's
Rumi
very
said,
Marianne Williamson-esque.
you are not a drop in the ocean, you're the entire ocean in the drop. If God is the ocean, you're not separate from it because you're just a drop. You're the entire ocean in that drop. So, am I the totality of God? Of course not. You're not the totality of God. You are the embodiment in Janelle, and I
Mhm.
am the embodiment in Jana of the divine. And when I identify the true me, not my
Mhm.
personality, not my nationality, not my gender, not my religion, not any of that. The true
Mhm.
essence of who I am at my core is divine. And so when I identify with my divinity, then I know who I truly am. So I don't have to put on a persona. I don't have to war with my sexuality. I don't have to war with my gender. I don't have to, I accept it all because I realize it's not who I am anyway.
Yeah. Huh. Basically, being spiritual is removing all of those layers of what separates you.
Yeah, I mean, my husband is a physician and he's a physician leader. So he'll lead groups of surgeons and doctors and nurse practitioners, hundreds. And the number one cause of burnout is lack of spiritual connection.
100%. People probably find that surprising. I don't at all.
But think about physicians. A lot of them are atheists. A lot of them challenge, they don't believe in anything and they
Yeah.
think they are God. I mean, I just said we are God, but they
Yeah.
think it in an egoic
No, I
way.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, do
Not
they ever?
And we saw that with the pandemic, everybody,
Yeah.
all these physicians saying this is what you should do. What happened to, self-sovereignty, like, and things that need to go on between a doctor and a patient, not the whole world, asking you
Yeah.
your medical information and
I'm in Canada. It was way worse. I like you guys
yeah,
down there, you would have not been able to handle Toronto. Holy crap.
yeah.
Like I'm pretty liberal in so many ways,
Me
but
too. Me too. But the
I
pandemic woke me up to a lot of Like, I think we had
Yeah.
our wool pulled over our eyes for a while there.
Canada was so bad. Like, you don't
Yeah.
even know. It like,
Well, I followed it all, so I do know, but yeah, I can't
the
imagine
amount
living
of
there.
lockdown yeah, the amount of lockdowns that Toronto was in was truly insane. There was another one January of 20 I wanna say 2022. There was
Yeah,
another one.
last year, yeah,
Anyways, I could
yeah.
rant and rant and rant
Me
and
too.
rant.
I said that'll be another podcast for
Oh
now.
my
We
god.
could write yeah.
It's yeah, it
I'm
was
sure
so
they'd be
like,
calling us conspiracy theorists, but then again, those people probably aren't listening
100%.
to your podcast.
No, some of them are for sure. I have some
Oh,
good ones. 'Cause
okay.
oh, the ones that like, oh, don't like conspiracy theories, you mean? Oh, yeah, no,
Right,
they
yeah,
don't.
yeah. Mhm.
No, the conspiracy theorists definitely do.
Yeah, I'm one of those. I've been
Uh,
one. Did you ever see the documentary Thrive?
no.
So you gotta look it up, thrivemovement.com. It was put
Okay.
out in 2011 by the heir to Procter& and Gamble, the big American
Mm,
corporation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
His name's Foster Gamble. He's a Buddhist, and he married a Canadian woman who's
Okay.
lovely, and she's in it with him. Her name's Kimberly, and this is 2011 now. All you
Yeah.
have to do when you get on there, just take and move. I mean, you wanna watch the whole thing, but just move it to an hour and a half into it. He tells you exactly what happened in 2020 is gonna happen 9 years before it happened. Yeah.
Given that you're spiritual, you obviously probably like a lot of astrology and stuff too, I would imagine?
I mean, I respect we're
Yeah,
one
yeah,
with
yeah.
everything, right? Full
Yeah.
moons, we have more homicides, new moons, more people
Yeah.
commit suicide. I mean, it's yes, we are
It's
connected to
freaky,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big astrology person, so I'm just starting to really learn about how, yeah, like, the moons affect these, like, constant cycles,
Mhm.
and, yeah, I was doing a little research on it, and it does make sense, like, when pandemic happened, some of the stuff that's happening today, it's like, yeah, well, we're in, like, this age of Aquarian or whatever, and it's like, these are usually the themes of what happens, like, if you look back, like, in the cycle, same kinds of stuff were happening before. It's cool. Like,
It
I
is
personally love
cool.
it.
It really is.
I love science as well. Like, I love
Me
all kinds of
too.
spirituality, science, like, I respect both sides. I come from a very, like, educated background, so I'm like, I love both.
You're an old soul.
Yeah, that's what I hear, but I've also done, like, quizzes and stuff of saying I'm new soul, so how do you know?
So there's a teaching called the Michael teachings. So Michael teachings teaches there's infant souls, baby souls, young souls, mature souls, old souls. So you could get a reading. They have self-test online. You need someone to channel the teachings to give you your soul age. And I have a shaman here. He and his wife own the Power Path. If you go
Okay.
Power Path, they teach shamanism, and he's wonderful. And he's a channel, just like Esther Hicks is a channel for Abraham. He's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
channel for the Michael teachings, and the Michael
Huh.
teachings are profound. They really helped me heal because my family of origin, my cousins, all the extended family are very fundamentalist Christian, and they don't
Yeah.
have relationship with me. It's very Christian of them, but they don't have relationship with me because they say I'm of the devil and I don't believe the way they do and yada yada.
Oh
Well,
god.
this teaching teaches that you know, a baby seeks
Yeah, yeah.
familiarity. I probably shared that with you. So I wasn't, you know, a baby soul is somebody who needs to be told what to do. You're
Right,
certainly
definitely
and
not that.
yeah, and an infant would live in places of survival. So your life
Okay.
expectancy wouldn't be very long. You would be living in Yemen or somewhere in the
Yeah,
Congo having your vulva cut out, you know, like
yeah.
then young souls are all money, money, money. America's a young soul country,
Okay.
materialism. And then mature souls are relationship oriented. Old souls are visionaries. So an old soul, you usually know you're an old soul because from a young age, you start figuring stuff out that maybe even adults can't see. And then you have a
Right.
vision of wanting to make the world a better place. Like it really drives you.
Right.
And it
Huh,
did
so maybe I
me
am.
from a young age. Like I was always like, you know, I wanted to help people heal. That's all that
Yeah,
consumed my thinking, even as a child.
right. Maybe I am. I remember that's what it was when we talked about it last time. I did the quiz, and I don't think I got old.
Yeah.
But when you explain it, it feels more like it, so
Yeah,
I
the
gotta redo the
quiz is
quiz.
like I don't know, some online tool maybe they just
Yeah,
use
I
to
have it
ask a
up
few
now.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I pulled it back up, so after this, I'm gonna do it. I love an online quiz, like, I really
I'll
do.
send you a link to Jose, and if you want to do a real reading, he'll Zoom
Yeah, yeah.
read you, and then he'll
Okay.
channel, and he'll tell you your soul age, what
Yeah,
archetype.
yeah.
I'm a king, which is very
Okay.
unusual. Women don't usually come in as kings.
Okay.
There's king, warrior, there's priest, sage, server.
Okay.
There's different archetypes. Your soul chooses to do something at this time on the planet. It's funny, but I just
Is
found my
that this,
old
like, 7 roles thing?
yes. So I just found my
Okay.
old paper on it here. Yeah, the different roles, and so my role is, yeah, king, mastery.
Okay. So looking at this, list that I have in front of me, the king seeks to lead and mandate.
Yeah, so either we, that's the visionary, right? That's a leader, but they can
Right.
also tend to be, into tyranny if they think they're right and they're
Yeah.
self-righteous. So it's a balancing, right? Everything's always about balance. So yeah, it's
Huh.
pretty
Yeah, I'll
interesting
do that.
stuff.
Yeah, I'll do that for sure. Last couple questions for you.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. I just like get chatting about like what we're talking about now, and anyone that's listening has to go read the book regardless. So that's
Yeah.
a given. You don't need to reread the book out in this episode. Like everyone's going to read it
Exactly.
anyway. I want you to share an example from your book that demonstrates how taking the responsibility for your soul's journey and cultivating faith in self impacted your life positively to kind of end it on a positive note.
Yeah, so at 47, I left a marriage that I felt very, comfortable in many ways, but I wasn't in love, so it really
Mm.
lacked that passion. And I knew I had to leap and expect my wings to appear. It was scary, and
Mhm.
I was definitely built many years staying with him and a codependent relationship. And here I am teaching it. So that's even a double edged sword, right? Because here you are teaching and you feel like an imposter out of integrity
Yeah.
with what you're teaching. So that was constantly happening. So I finally, an incident happened, dissolves the marriage. Now I'm free falling at the end of my 40s with the story. Oh God, I'm a has been, nobody's going to want me. I'm going to end up like my mother alone. And so I had still a lot of work to do. And it took me about 2.5 years of loving little Jana, putting her first, changing those thoughts from no one's going to want me to I want me. I don't care
Mm.
if anybody else doesn't. I do. So I just kept
Mhm.
turning all that back on, giving love to myself feels better than getting it from others was my mantra, and I just said it over and over until one day I woke up and I actually believed it. It was like, "Oh,
Good.
it does feel better giving it to myself than getting it. Because when you're
Yeah.
trying to get it from others, you're at the mercy of them, and then it's temporary, right? It's not lasting,
Mhm.
and it's hard to receive a compliment if you're imploding and being critical with yourself, right? So
Yeah.
you can't even receive somebody else's love and words of affirmation if you're not giving it
Mhm.
to yourself. So I do all this work and I end up at a meditation retreat. I felt like spirit always guided me, go have fun in the summers, just enjoy yourself. So I'd take off work and I would just go to yoga festivals and, retreats
Mhm.
and just do stuff for me
Mhm.
to really take care of me, self-care. And I found myself at a retreat and all this work really led me to meeting my twin flame, my beloved.
Mhm.
And I knew he was out there. I would talk to him a lot, for any women that are single listening to me. Like,
Mhm.
I would really start to tune and lean in and call him in. I would say, "I know you're doing your work too, just like I
Mhm.
am. And just know when the time is right that the universe is gonna conspire and bring us together. I know that'll happen. And in the meantime, I'm sending you love wherever you are, and I'm just gonna be loving on me, right? Because you don't
Mhm.
complete me, I complete me."
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was at a retreat, meditating 6 hours a day, going deep. Wise little one starts nudging, "Let's leave." I don't wanna leave. I've paid a lot of money to be here. I'm in Big
Yeah.
Sur, California, this beautiful location. But I leave, I listened, and I got on a plane the next day and sat next to my husband and met him.
You listened and left the retreat early.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
an airplane, airport story.
Yeah. And, I
Uh,
knew online dating was not for me. It always felt inauthentic. I never
so
could stick with it long. I felt
mm,
a fearful or an anxiety. There was always this undercurrent of, needing to show who you are. They're trying to, it
mhm,
just was weird and awkward. So I never stuck with it. And I just thought, I've got to learn how to love myself fully and completely so that if he doesn't show up, I'm okay. And,
yeah.
I have to say, day I left that retreat that night, so the night before I met my husband, I think it all settled. Do you know how you'll know something intellectually and then you work on it, work on it, work on it, and then one day you're just like, "Oh, it dropped," and you're like, "Yeah, of
Mhm.
course." That's what
Yeah, you're
happened.
ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just fell in love with little Jana so much that she knew and she tested me after I met Lance, my husband. I was kind of sidestepping that he hadn't filed for a divorce yet. He said he was going through a divorce.
Mhm.
Going through a divorce and filing for a divorce are two different things.
Very different things.
And I
Yeah.
hadn't got specific with him. And so the old Jana, previous to really loving herself, might have just pushed that under the rug.
Mm,
But the new Jana, little Jana, was like, "Hey, you're not going to break my heart again. You promised. You're not going to
mhm.
hand me off to a man and let him crush me. You promised it's you and me, and I come first." And I was like, "You're right." So I had to have a crucial conversation with him and say, "Listen, I'm a woman of value." These were the exact words I said. And I value myself so much, I choose me. And I don't date married men. So once you're further along your path, you can call me, but I'm not interested. That was a
And
Thursday, and on Monday, he filed. And we took our time. I
Mhm.
mean, I even said to him, "Listen, the next man I make love to will be the man I marry." And I was
Yeah.
serious. I was gonna be turning 50. I was kind of spinning out about it,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
"Oh my god, I'm old," and I was freaking out and right before my 50th. So it was months later before we became intimate, and we took it slow, but we knew right away. Our first date, we both knew, like,
Yeah.
"There you are." Like, it was
Did you
awesome.
know meeting him or you just had an inkling?
No, meeting him on the plane, I was attracted to him. He was smart. He was, it was a
Yeah.
lot of, but I wasn't, I was, I didn't ask for his info. I was very much about, I am a goddess. You need to worship
Yeah.
me. You need to come towards me. You need to make the moves. You are the masculine. It's up to
Yeah, yeah.
you. And I don't even see that as traditional in the sense, I just understand it as energy.
Yeah.
The male must, he's the one who has to take those. We are the ones who choose, yay or nay. Am I going to accept
Yeah.
you or not? We have the power. And so I just felt with him, like it was very different, because I chose me. And now my marriage to him is so healthy and healing
Yeah.
every day because he takes care of his feelings. I take care of my feelings. We can communicate if somebody takes something personal. We rarely do, but if we do, it's there's no drama. It's like the
Right.
most loving, easy relationship.
So how did he find you if you didn't, exchange any info?
Well, he asked for my card. I
Okay.
didn't, I was getting ready to get off he's like, "Oh, I don't know how to get in touch with you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so here's my card." And I took off
Yeah,
the
yeah.
plane and yeah, and then he called. He actually emailed me and said, "I don't believe in fate, but I believe in opportunity, and I'd like an opportunity to get to know you better." I was like, "Okay, I
Oh my
like
god, I like that.
opportunist." Yeah.
I like that. I like that line a lot. It's, like, cheeky, but mature in a way.
Yeah, he has no game. The guy is
Oh,
nerdy.
no?
No, he had only been with his wife. He was married since college. He met her.
One of
He had
those.
yeah, no game. Total innocent. I was like, "Oh, yeah, honey, let me get you and I just teach you a thing or two." Just kidding, but not
Seriously.
really. Yeah.
No, seriously. I don't know if that type would be able to handle me at all.
Yeah. No, they probably would. You'd blow their mind.
Yeah, but the ones without any game, I'm like, it's like they're so innocent.
So innocent. That's how Lance
Yeah.
was. He had a lot of innocence and purity and little Jana deserved that. Now the
Which
old
one?
Jana didn't feel like she deserved that. She needed the bad boy. be
Yeah.
mean to me, cheat on me, all of that because I still hadn't healed that core wound of my father wound. And then, of course, my
Yeah.
mother wound because she didn't feel worthy. So, if my
Mm.
mother's not worthy, she brought me into the world. I'm not worthy. So, yeah.
Mm. Huh. It's funny the conversations that get created that aren't even intentional, and I find that with every single guest I come on this podcast with, because 'cause you've given me so much more to journal about, meditate on, reminisce, and think, "Huh, there's a lot," and obviously the stuff that you went through as a child is nothing that I went through, of course. But remember when I asked you at the beginning, like, do people still relate? Like, there is still a lot of relatability, especially when it comes to the inner child stuff,
Mhm.
no matter what you went through.
Mhm.
And I think, and for anyone listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube now, the the topic of inner child, I think we're just touching the surface of. Do you think that too?
Well, I mean, not really, because in the 90s, my first teacher in inner child work was John Bradshaw. He passed away. He was a
Yeah.
PhD in Houston. He used to be on PBS a lot. He wrote a lot about the
Okay.
dysfunctional families and how shame gets developed. And he talked a lot
Yeah.
about inner child. So it's been around, but again, we're still talking about a science that's fairly new,
Yeah.
psychology. And then you
Yeah.
take transpersonal psychology, that was really in the 60s and 70s. This whole idea of self love. What is self love? That used to
Yeah.
drive me nuts. It's like, what does that mean? Is it bubble baths and pedicures? No,
Yeah.
it's emotionally loving yourself, it's physically loving. There's a lot of this idea
Mhm.
now around don't fat shame me and I'm beautiful, that big, rapper girl. And I'm not shaming anybody, but I'm sorry, you do
Mhm.
not love yourself if you have a fatty liver and you're obese and you
Right.
don't move your body and eat healthy. You would not do that to a child. That would be child abuse.
Right.
Right? And so
Yeah.
there's just a lot that's, again, as you know, this worldview of things that are happening. But loving yourself truly is saying, I've got one body. I want to care for it. I want to move it. I want to feed it good organic food. I want to, not feed it glyphosate and chemical food and fake farm meat and
Yeah.
all that, and then spiritually, I wanna connect to spirit, I wanna feel connected to others and nature. I have spiritual practice, it's the way I love myself. Organizationally, I wanna keep things organized. Children thrive in environments where there's, organized. Relationships, I want my relationships to mirror back to me the love and attention and respect I give myself. That's the
Mhm.
way I love myself. I'm not gonna be in a relationship with people who are lie to me and do crazy stuff and create drama. Like, that's not self-loving. There's many ways we love ourselves. Financially, making sure our bills are
Yeah.
paid, we save our money. So,
Mhm.
I'm really a big advocate of teaching people, breaking down what is self-love and
Yeah.
how can you fall in love. And I always have clients do this, but I do it too. I put a picture of myself as a little girl on my phone
Very cute. Very cute.
and then I keep them around everywhere. I have one here on my desk and then I get
Smart.
clients when they come to work. It's always a picture of yourself around 5, 6 years old. She's with you. He's with you. Like, start, you know, relating and treating yourself. Would you say, oh, you're an idiot to a child? I hope
Yeah.
not. And you tell yourself you're an idiot if you mess up, or no, if I mess up,
Mhm.
I say it's okay to make mistakes. I still love
Yeah.
you. You're
You learn from
human.
them.
Yeah.
Hmm. Jana, any final last words for anyone that's listening? And then also, obviously, plug your book one more time and then where everyone can connect with you.
Yeah. So, last words. I mean, I think that was powerful what I just said about loving
Mhm.
yourself and putting yourself first. I think I said earlier, these ancient teachings tell us that we suffer when we don't know the nature of true reality. And the nature of true reality is you're a spiritual being having a human experience. You are not a
Mhm.
human having some occasional spiritual. So, if
Mhm.
you can make your inner world more real than what you're experiencing, you'll start to experience it. And what I mean by that is just every day dip into stillness and silence, because really that's all meditation is. You got to still the body and then the mind will follow. And then create images in your mind, even if you don't think you I had a client recently, she's like, "I don't see in images." I always question that. I'm like, "Well, what'd you have for breakfast?" And they tell
Mm.
me, and I'm like, "And you can't picture your meal that you just had?"
Yeah.
Like, you just haven't
Sounds silly.
developed it. You just stopped using because children have imagination. They
Yeah.
see in pictures. And so the little child in you wants you to show them images that get them excited about the future of possibility and what could be possible. And the more you do that, you take
Mhm.
your brain and body to a future potential before it's happened, you're really living ahead of time. Then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, like you were talking about before, synchronicities start happening. Those meaningful coincidences. Oh, so and so met so and so, and then next thing you know, you meet your beloved, or the next great job, or whatever it is that you're desiring shows up because you
Mhm.
were imagining it, how it would
Yeah.
feel, smell, taste, touch, all of that before it ever happened. And that
Right.
is how we manifest. It's not a becoming metahuman or supernatural isn't as hard as people think. It's just they get stuck in stinking thinking, I call it, from the past, and they're not
Mhm.
using the creative power of their mind to envision what they desire. The mind doesn't know
Mhm.
the difference, right? Between it's happening or I'm just imagining it. So start
Mhm.
imagining what you want to happen, not what you're afraid might happen.
Yeah. So true. And Jana, where can people connect with you?
So janawilson.com is the book website. I'm selling author copies on there, autographed, and I ship them out. Amazon, all online retailers will have the book, the ebook. I'm
Yeah.
recording the Audible, my
So cool.
voice. Yeah. Gonna be
When's it gonna be
interesting.
done?
I'll be finished probably by mid-August.
Nice.
It's a lot because
Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes I get emotional. And then I was telling my husband, I can't record if I'm emotional. He's like, it's okay if sometimes a little emotion comes through.
That's good, I think.
Yeah. He said, that's
Yeah.
your reading your story. They might want to hear that. I'm like,
I
I don't know.
agree.
But
Yeah, don't cut that out.
yeah, that'll be out mid August. And then we have a group retreat coming up, the Emotional Healing Experience in South Florida on the ocean
Mm.
in September, Labor Day week. That's a beautiful, if somebody's ready to really do some deep dive,
Mhm.
immersion, healing work, that's what we do. My motto is go deep or go home.
Yeah, I
So,
like that.
yeah. And then Emotional Healing Retreats is that website. So Jana Wilson or Emotional Healing Retreats.
Amazing. Jana, thank you so much. For everyone listening, yeah, just get the book or wait for the audio version, but hopefully this episode has intrigued you enough. So Jana, thank you.
Thank you.